We're here this morning to take impressions of these abutments for a bridge between teeth numbers 7 and 10. And before we began anything, 3 custom trays were fabricated for this purpose. Each one of them has an occlusal stop, 3 in fact, here, here, and here, so that when the tray is put in place, it's not overseated and provides a uniform thickness of 2 millimeters worth of impression material on all sides of the abutments. We find that with stock trays, we often have an excess of 2 millimeters on the palatal or on the lingual surfaces of the teeth, and that excessive amount causes a slumping of the impression material away from the teeth. In fact, we'll find that we also prefer the medium viscosity impression materials in both the syringe and the tray. Particularly when you're using Aquasil, it comes in a very low viscosity material which tends to fall right off the teeth. So with those we go all purple. With Impergum it's all purple, so you get the idea. Now, this tray has been made to fit his mouth comfortably. Open wide, please. And we notice that it does precisely that. So this tray can be used as one of 3 trays for taking an impression of one of these 3 teeth. It's incredibly difficult to get all 3 teeth in one impression. So we've made up 3 trays ahead of time so that we can then work to get 1 per tray. After the impressions are made and poured and we have the casts, we can then fabricate the units independently on each cast. After they're seated, they are then transferred together or locked together for solder transfer. And after the soldered bridge is tried in and its fit confirmed, we can then fabricate a master cast which will be used for porcelain application. The fabrication of a master cast will be shown on a subsequent video. Now, if we needed to fabricate an interocclusal registration on a triad record base, we would absolutely need to include the palate in this maxillary impression. But in this particular instance, close down, Darryl. Darryl has all his posterior teeth providing excellent stops for hand articulation of these casts, so we don't need to have the palate in this tray, and that's going to be removed before we use it. Alrighty, now let's take a look at the setup of equipment that's necessary for this procedure. Here we have the necessary armamentarium for gingival retraction. We have retraction cord, and in this case it's Ultra Pack 00. I tend to think of it though as the braided cord that's brown and yellow, because I don't use any other cord. I don't use any other size. I find that this cord is thin enough or narrow enough in diameter to fit small circular spaces, and if I use more of it, it fits bigger spaces. It's, in essence, the same philosophy as to how can you more thoroughly fill a pail, with sand or with rocks. If you use sand, which is smaller, there's less air holes, and it does a better job of thoroughly filling. So this is the cord that I prefer. And I will use a piece of cord that is approximately 6 inches long, like so. And then the cord is placed in Hemodent liquid, and here we have a dappen dish of Hemodent liquid. And we would place the cord in the liquid, or in this case, retrieve the 6 inches of cord that has been hiding in there all along. We'll then blot it out, and it's ready to apply.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, and lest we forget, the cord is placed with a ball sheet cord packing instrument, which we have here on the bracket table. The instrument says ball sheet packer right on the shank, so it's easy to identify. And indeed, it is in your kit. Okay, we'll now begin the process of gingival retraction. And we start by letting the long end of the cord hang outside of the mouth. And we begin by taking the packing instrument and placing the cord into the sulcus. We just start it like so. Now, when you place the cord down into the sulcus, frequently students will find that as they push the cord into position, it bounces up again. And the reason why that happens is because the diameter of preparation, subgingival, is much wider than it is right here at the gingival margin. So if you take a half-inch piece of cord and push it into an inch-long space, obviously it's too short and it's going to pop up. So to resolve that, I don't push it down, I push it backwards against the starting point, like so. It's almost the same thing as packing a truck. To move from here to there, you go ahead and you pack it toward the front of the truck, up to the roof, and work your way backwards, instead of pushing everything on the floor, then having to walk on all of it in order to fill the middle third, and then have no room left to get to the top. And as you'll see, we keep pushing it in until when? Until it won't take anymore, until it's completely filled. So here's a very, very significant point that I want you to understand and to embrace as part of this technique. While this is called gingival retraction, I don't think that's a very good term for the procedure. I would much prefer that we call this sulcular expansion. What we are truly trying to do is to widen the space between the tooth and the sulcular epithelium so that we have a moat around the castle, if you will, of each one of these teeth, so that we have a wide space that can be filled appropriately with the impression material. If we have a wide space, we will have a thicker fin of impression material around the margin, and when the stone is then poured into that impression, it won't create either a bending in or a bending out of that fin, and it will give us a die that has good dimensions and less distortions. Now, turn to your left a little bit more. So you'll see that as we fill this and push it forward against itself, we actually get a little bit of blanching of the tissues. They almost take a cyanotic appearance as we can see the tissue and the pressure right through the gingiva. Okay, we will now continue this all the way around the tooth, and it does take a little bit of time, but that's absolutely essential. And you'll notice, you see, that with a thin cord like this, it does fit into this nice narrow space. Now I'm also going to take the blade and place it between the tooth and the cord and just give a little bit of a gentle push out of the cord just to make sure that we've expanded this. As I said, this is sulcular expansion based upon the inherent elasticity of the gingival tissues, allowing them to stretch. Gingival retraction, if you push down hard in an apical direction, could, in the most worst-case scenario, rip the epithelial attachment from the side of the tooth, and we certainly don't want that to happen. Alrighty, I'm now going to proceed with the retraction, and if I run out of cord, I'll leave a little 1/4-inch tail sticking up in space and then just start with a new piece. By the way, there's one other advantage to having a long piece of cord. If it's short, it often falls in the mouth and gets saturated with saliva. And when the cord gets wet, it's very difficult to manipulate. As long as we keep it dry, it works fine. Alrighty, we now have completed the gingival retraction. There's a little tail right here where the first piece ended, and this is a secondary piece. And at this point, the question comes up, how long should we allow the cord to stay in? And the average answer to that is 5 minutes. However, when you think about it, the area that was first retracted has been in longer than the area where the retraction was completed. So if this has been in for 5 minutes, this has been in for 30 seconds. If this has been in for 5 minutes, this has been in for 10 minutes. So the answer to the timing question is finish the retraction and then proceed to the next step. And the next step is the application of a little bit of hydrogen peroxide. So behind me, we have a dappen dish with hydrogen peroxide, and I saturate a cotton-tipped applicator with the peroxide and come on over and dab the cord with peroxide. Now, this young man's gingiva is in excellent health, and his home care is absolutely superb, so we didn't see any bleeding. But frequently there is bleeding in the sulcus, either because of some lingering gingival inflammation or because of the very act of packing the cord and expanding the sulcus. And the cord itself acts a bit like a initiator for coagulation. So as the bleeders bleed into the cord, they form a clot with the cord. And then when you remove the cord, you could easily cause bleeding. And anytime there's liquid in the sulcus, be it gingival fluid, blood, water, or saliva, you will get a very good impression of the liquid, but you will not get a good impression of the tooth itself. So it's necessary to try to control all moisture contamination. By applying peroxide, we do two things. We moisten the cord, dissolve the clot so that it's not likely to cause a ripping of a capillary upon removal, and it also cauterizes the capillary, so it's a good way of controlling any of the problems that we may have with the bleeding problem. Also to be mentioned is viscostat, which is a hemostatic agent that can be applied in the sulcus in those cases of extreme bleeding where there is not proper control. And that particular material is available with instructions at the dispensing area. Alrighty, now we've used the peroxide, the next thing to do, and in this case it's relatively unnecessary, but the next thing that would be done would be to rinse it all off with the water spray and air. And that's essential if the peroxide has actually foamed and frothed and created the general mess that happens when it is indeed working with blood. There's a lot of byproducts that accumulate on the surface of the tooth, and washed off it must be. We're then ready to remove the cord and inject the material. And the idea of injection of the impression material in the sulcus is to get the tip into the sulcus, not just near it, but in it. Keep it in it as you go 400 degrees around the tooth. Now, I know what I'm talking about there. That's not 360. You want to start and then continue around and go through the starting point so that you get a nice blend without a crease. Okie doke, we're now ready. But the tray, by the way, has had the pallet removed, and it has the tray adhesive has been applied approximately 10 minutes ago, which is the drying time for the adhesive. Alrighty, at your convenience. When the syringe is loaded, I'll be informed that it's ready. At that point, I'll remove the cord, take the syringe, and inject into the sulcus, after which I'll then apply the tray. Alrighty, now we begin injecting by having the tip right in the sulcus. We work our way through the mesial, in the sulcus on the palatal. We can watch it coming through the distal. We go back through the initial part, 400 degrees around the tooth, then cover the entire preparation. Make certain that his lip doesn't touch it. Stay nice and open, and the tray will be, there it is. Okay, open real wide. Place the tray in, make sure the lip doesn't touch. Help drape his lip over it, seat it until the stops are in place, and we'll now proceed to hold for 7 minutes. Alrighty, to remove the tray, we'll simply hold on to the handle, put a finger up under a vestibule, and give it a nice down and out pull. Well done. And here we have our successful impression, which can be confirmed by taking a perio probe and measuring the actual length of the preparation from the occlusal surface to the margin, and then comparing that measurement in the patient's mouth. Once again, measuring from the gingival margin to the top of the preparation. If the numbers are the same, you know you have it. Also, if your finish line ends in a clean chamfer, be it a lingual chamfer for porcelain fused to metal or a beveled shoulder with a flame-shaped diamond that is also a chamfer, you can actually read the finish line right in the impression, and that's instantaneous confirmation. We have now completed the making of an impression. We did not take the impression, although that's the next step. We will now take the impression to the laboratory to pour it with dental stone.